I just finished public school, I'll tell you why it's great. Waking up at 6 a.m. to pledge allegiance to the state. Yeah, it's true. I got my public school blues.
Right now, I want to go back. We have Michael on the phone. He's in New York. He's an architect, and he was suggesting that the only profession that really requires college, all of the college, which I think for a medical profession is like 8 years, is becoming a doctor. Do I have that right, Michael?
Yeah, that's for certain.
And
actually, I just want to... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and the only reason it's required is because of all the trouble you can get in legally if you don't, because I'm sure somebody could become a medical doctor through, an apprenticeship.
iTunes University?
No, but I mean, like you could learn a lot online, and you could learn a lot. To say that the only way you could become a doctor is by going through this horrible schooling system and this residency where you're basically a slave, going through all the hoops that they have now. To say that's the only way you can become a doctor, I just think is false. But I mean,
I would like to point out that the government requires you to have more hours of schooling to cut hair than they do to fly an airplane.
Really?
That's right.
So, Michael, what other thoughts do you have?
Something that Mandrik said before was, he asked me about internships for architects and if you could apprentice.
Right.
And actually, to get your license, you cannot apprentice. You have to go to an accredited university.
That is insane.
Yeah, and so what it did was kill the profession, because essentially what you would do, and all the famous architects like Frank Lloyd Wright apprenticed with somebody and learned the profession and the practice that way. And, of course, they didn't have to go through all the debt slavery. What I would suggest to somebody who's interested in becoming an architect, say, is don't go to college for it. Actually work at a firm, because a lot of big firms actually don't have licensed architects. There may be one or two in the office, but if there's an office of like 100 people, not everybody there is a licensed architect. So you'll actually get to practice in the field without needing to go through all those hoops.
Do you feel like that would create a little bit of like an incestuous situation where maybe, people like perpetuate some mistakes, and maybe at 20 years down the road, a firm starts turning out like mutant buildings, with like
but if they're
towers that lead to nowhere. And
but who's going to pay to have this built if they're not, structurally
that
sound?
was the way the profession was run architecture is the second oldest profession in the world. It's the second only, of course, to prostitution.
I was going to say prostitution, right? Yeah.
And,
you got to build those whorehouses.
We go back to the ancient world, and of course, that's how you learned the profession from way back then, was learning from somebody else, and also learning from their mistakes. Every firm that I worked at had its own series of mistakes, and I've learned from that in going on in my own career. So, I hope... But also, we're living in a world in which there's so much educational stuff at your fingertips online for such a little cost. I mean, a computer's cheap, internet connections are cheap, and you could, for a fraction of the cost you would go to college, learn from like the Mises Institute, learn from actual like real professors in a sort of college type atmosphere where you're learning a lecture thing. That I almost think that I can't think of any profession that's worth the 4+ years and the thousands of dollars in debt for.
Yeah. So I spent 8 years in college and grad school studying economics. And when I started that, it was kind of, internet was just basically getting off its feet.
Right.
I could go and learn more about economics on the Mises.org website today in probably, a week or two than I did in 8 years sitting in not sitting in classrooms, as it were.
Right.
I think there also needs to be a big shift, too, where people who are in professions now, like architects and stuff, need to be more open-minded to taking in apprentices and changing the way the world works.
Right.
I mean, we have the power to do that now, especially us younger architects going into the field. Take people under our wings and turn them into the next generation of architects, and maybe we can reverse that whole need to go to the BS university for a BS degree.
And Michael suggested, if we heard you right, I'm sorry, you said paying them with experience.
Or some type of stipend, like a small amount of pay. I don't know, but I mean, yeah, you're right. They have minimum wage laws, and it's crazy.
But that experience, when you're at a a point in your career where you're making $10 or $12 an hour, maybe you start out something on the lowest rung, that experience is worth so much more than the money that you're going to get, but people are just like Osborne said, the opportunity cost. And I think the trend that we're talking about and the direction that we'd like to see this go actually loosely links to our last story about this boy who's might be starting trouble in his North Carolina high school by coming to the defense of Mitt Romney, where, I don't remember a lot of times in high school even thinking about challenging a teacher or even considering the fact that there was a whole real world out there. And, for him to say, I can just put this up on YouTube and show it to everybody, I think that's great. Michael, thank you very much for the call. Give us a call anytime. We're here Thursdays, 10 to midnight, 843. Join SSP. We'll be right back.
Public school, you keep me in good mental health, 'cause without you, I'd have to think for myself.